Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists episode 604. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Not going to lie, James, I almost said, and my name is Zach, just to fill that space.
Hi, Kyle.
And Kayla is joining us too.
Yep. She's filling in for Zach. No, we're Zachless. He's not here.
Yeah, he is I think he's in Toledo, Ohio right now.
Right. He's flying back right now.
Oh, is he flying back right now?
Okay. Well, I mean, he might be sitting in an airport in Toledo, Ohio, but I've been tasked to pick him up at 12:30 tonight.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. So you will have firsthand accounts of the exciting Toledo trip.
Yes. I mean, I really only have one question. Did the mayor think you were insane?
Oh, that's right. He met the mayor. He had lunch with the mayor.
Right. That's the one question I need answered.
Of all the places Zach has been to in the world, he is most excited to go to Toledo, Ohio.
All right.
Good on you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an adventure, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a bucket list place for him.
Sure.
How
many other people do you think have Toledo, Ohio on their bucket list?
I'm guessing most of them live in Akron and just want to see the world.
Sure. They've never gone past their city limits. And so.
Yeah. Like I heard Columbus is great and all, but Toledo, that's where it's at.
They want to get out to the big city.
Yeah.
Toledo.
Yep. I don't even think Toledo's the big city in Ohio.
I don't even know. Is Akron bigger or smaller than Toledo?
These are great questions. I do not know the answer to. The population of, I guess we could bring it up if we're really interested.
I know almost zero about Ohio in general. I know that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there, right?
Oh, Cleveland. Yeah, they do have Cleveland. That's probably their biggest city.
Right. I know they had to rename their baseball team.
Mm. Oh,
right?
That's right. They were the Indians. What are they now?
I don't know.
I think they're still the Indians.
Sure. Really? I thought they had to rename.
I mean, they should rename, but
the Redskins renamed. Maybe they just got rid of their mascot.
Yeah, which is a step in the right direction, but
sure,
still not quite there. Are you ready for do you want the top? I bet you if I did the top 10 cities in Ohio by population, you recognize at least half of these. Okay. Number 10, we have Hamilton.
Okay.
Almost 63,000 people. Number 9, Lorain, 65,000 people. Number 8, Canton. This is the first town I've heard of. 69,000 people. You have heard of Canton?
I don't know where, but I do recognize that name.
Isn't like isn't there some football thing in Canton, Ohio? Or isn't like the NCAA Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio? I feel like there's something national in Canton, Ohio.
It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
There it is. Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's what it is. Okay. So
that's probably where I've heard of it.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Number 7, Parma, 79,000.
Nope.
Now we have a big leap to Dayton, which is 135,000. Not quite double the size of Parma.
Okay.
So it really feels like most people in Ohio live within these 6 cities. Because then Akron, number 5, 188. Then another big leap to Toledo, 266, which is similar to the size of Madison, Wisconsin, where I live, where Zach grew up. So I wonder if Toledo has a Madison feel to it. Then you jump to number 3, Cincinnati, 309,000. Number 2, Cleveland.
Really? 309,000.
309 in Cincinnati. Cleveland.
That's what Orlando has.
Oh, okay. All right. So then I wonder if that feels... I'm sure everyone calls Cincinnati the Orlando of Ohio.
Orlando City proper, I should say. Like if you took all the like suburbs, it'd be way more than that. But
not the metro area.
Right.
Fair. Yeah. Cleveland, number 2, 361. And another big leap to Columbus, 900,000, just shy of 1 million.
Oh, wow.
So,
all right.
So, yeah, Zach is exploring the 4th largest city in Ohio currently.
Sure. It's working his way up.
This is part of his lifelong goal to see the 4th largest city of every state.
Right.
It's a very specific goal of his.
And have lunch with the mayors of
have lunch with the
fourth
mayor
largest
of each one. Yeah.
Right.
I am now curious to know. I'm sure Zach will do this. He'll probably look up what is the fourth largest city of every state and see if he's been there. I hope he reports back to us next week.
I hope so too. It'd be a shame if he didn't.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast, Kyle.
Thank you, James.
This is a flashback to the summer of 2020 when it was just me and you.
Oh yeah, great times. Everyone loves summer of 2020. The good old days.
Well, I hesitate to say, but do believe we were the only bright spot of that summer.
Like for the entire world or just for yourself personally?
For us and anybody within listening range.
I would say summer 2020 was pretty bad for many reasons. Especially here in the United States.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think most of the world was kind of feeling the pain at that point.
Oh yeah, but like we had our own specific countrywide problems on top of the global pandemic, which we were handling like champs.
Sure. I don't want to get into it too far, but
yes, you do.
If Trump becomes the Republican nominee, like what does that possibly say about us as a country?
Oh, it's not if. He will become the Republican nominee. Like there's no
absolute
if
insanity if that happens.
Well, Joe Biden's old, so I mean, gotta go for the almost as old guy.
Sure. Okay, let's move on before we get in too deep.
Yeah, let's not piss off too many listeners.
This could turn bad real fast.
Yep. We don't have Zach here to rein us in.
No.
Nope.
Before we jump into our main topics for this week, which is going to include a lot of Wes Anderson. If you're not a Wes Anderson fan and you have no interest in Wes Anderson, you could probably stop listening right now because that's what it's going to be the rest of this podcast.
I can't stop listening though.
You can't stop listening.
No,
but
I can't. I must
other
be
people. People not speaking into microphones and listening through earbuds, they can stop listening if they want to.
Yeah.
But I recommend you stay because maybe I will turn you around on Wes Anderson.
Yeah, James might.
We'll see. Before we jump into all that, we need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out. YouTube.com, search Cinereelists, find us there, subscribe and watch while you listen. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Support the podcast, get extra after show audio. Last week was a good one too. We had a pretty heated debate, I would say, about a potential future show topic.
Oh yes. Yeah, actually, and this debate has continued onto the Discord channel.
Yes. So if you're a Patreon supporter and you're behind on your listening, just skip to like the most recent one, the one for episode 603, because there's a good deal of arguing, which is fun. And also we need people's opinions because we have a decision point to make at some point. And and feedback.
I would say right now, the opinions we're getting are more landing on the side of me and Zach.
I don't know. I see him closer to you than me or Zach.
Okay.
If that makes sense. At least in the Discord.
I guess Zach and I had similar stakes on this. Like you presented your idea, which you were very hard on. This is how it is.
Sure.
And Zach and I had caveats that were similar, but yeah, maybe the caveats are falling more in my favor right now. But
yeah, I mean, most people listening have no idea what we're talking about, so I don't want to get too far into it. But I saw it more as I gave into the idea that maybe I was being too harsh, and I liked yours was one I could live with. And on the Zach side, he either didn't want to commit to anything painful.
Yes.
Or he wanted some way out of it. And that thing couldn't be that painful.
That's yes. Maybe, yeah.
So to me, your proposition was like still painful enough, hooky enough to run with it. Whereas Zach just didn't want to sacrifice anything, really.
Zach wanted
for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I don't know if that entices you to go listen, but if you're not a Patreon supporter, go check it out. I kind of feel like I want to just drop that episode in the Discord too, even if you're not like a Patreon listener. Do you think patrons would be upset if I did that?
I mean, I think if you're trying to sell the Patreon and then also telling people this might be in Discord, then
I'm not saying I'm going to do that. I was asking you for your opinion. Do you think that's unfair to Discord members? I mean, it's been a week since it's been out, or to Patreon members.
I don't think it's not terribly unfair to Patreon members. There's definitely been precedents of past Patreon shows making it to the main feed.
Sure.
And it's not like we're dropping everything that's on Patreon. Like Patreon is still pretty exclusive to its content. So I think if we every now and then drop a Patreon episode to the public in some way, shape, or form, that's not going to offend our Patreon or, go back on their financial obligations.
Okay. So if you're in the Discord or you want to be in the Discord, contact us and we will drop the Patreon episode in there and you can watch it even if you're not a Patreon listener or supporter. And then you can also get a taste for what we do over there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if you watch it on Discord, please weigh in because we need your feedback.
Yep. Also, we need your feedback on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review, 5 stars only. We'd appreciate that. Or send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. We'd appreciate that as well. All that being said, let's talk Wes Anderson's Roald Dahl short films, which is available on Netflix right now. We're going to get into it right after this clip.
Henry died last year, aged 63, from a pulmonary embolism. He saw it coming, quite literally, but was very much at peace. He'd been following his plan for just over 20 years. He'd made £644 million. He'd left 21 well-established, well-run children's hospitals and orphanages all around the world, administered and financed from Lausanne by John Winston and his staff. His work was complete.
That was a clip from the wonderful story of Henry Sugar, one of 4 short films that dropped recently on Netflix, directed by Wes Anderson, based on a short story or a piece of writing from famed children's author.
Yeah.
Roald Dahl. All 4 shorts are more aimed at adult audiences, I would say, than his children's work.
Yeah, these are not like Fantastic Mr. Fox, which is also Roald Dahl.
Right.
But that felt more kid friendly. Like that's the one Wes Anderson movie that my son has seen.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these are, I would say like kids could enjoy these, but they're definitely more adult oriented.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple that I would not show to a kid for sure.
I think it depends on the kid.
Yeah, probably. And how young.
Yeah, correct.
Although there's some that kids would be like, why am I watching this? Anyway, Netflix gave Wes Anderson some money to adapt some Roald Dahl pieces of writing into short films. He did that. He did that in his way, I would say. And we watched all 4 of them, and we're here to talk about them. Let's get into the first one. This is a short film titled The Swan. It's 17 minutes long, stars Asa Jennings and Rupert Friend. And it's about, according to IMDb, a small, brilliant boy is tormented by 2 large, idiotic bullies. I mean, that's the plot for sure. I think the presentation is maybe just as important as the plot here.
Yes. So as I'm going to talk about these shorts, especially these 4, the only 4 we're talking about, I'm definitely going to be discussing the story itself, which is, more in the hands of Roald Dahl, but also how did Wes Anderson adapt and present this story for the screen? And those are kind of the 2 things I was considering as I was watching all 4 of these.
Sure. There's a couple conventions that Wes Anderson gives this series of 4 that run through all of them. Why don't we talk about those first? One, they're in his style, his storybook, dollhouse style of storytelling.
And I would say, having consumed a lot of Wes Anderson in the last week, they're in what I would say his recent style, because he's evolved as a filmmaker.
Dollhouse. Yeah.
Yes. And like definitely in the last couple films, they've become way more dollhousey. And this movie or these shorts aren't even trying to pretend like they exist in a real world. Like they are framed as they're on sets. There are moving parts of the set. There's stage hands that deliver props. So you're definitely watching a very stylized version of Wes Anderson doing himself, which is odd to say.
Sure. Another through line is occasionally they will cut to a representation of Roald Dahl, played by Ray Fiennes, in his writing room, I guess that was supposed to be. And he'll just narrate to the camera for a few minutes some piece of context or something like that out of nowhere.
On top of that, all these stories are told by characters on screen narrating to camera. And then they will interact with the other characters on the screen. But there's usually one narrator per short who is talking directly to camera and even giving stage directions, which I found weird sometimes. Like a character who's playing a doctor will say something like, I gasped, and then we'll gasp to the other characters, which I found to be a little weird. Or they'll be like, that's great, he said. And I understand why Wes Anderson does that, because he is who he is. And like he's presenting these as stories that are being told to the viewer. But it was weird to have all those narrative all those written styles left into this spoken script.
I also found it curious that when they release these, as best I can tell, there's no specific order in which to watch them. Like, at least publicly. Like, it's not like they had a title called like Wes Anderson's Roald Dahl's short films, and then here was episode 1, 2, 3, and 4, and this is the order we generally want you to watch them. There's nothing like that. They just kind of look like random video clips on the service, I would say.
I think they were released individually in an order, so like they weren't all dropped at once, but I do not know what that order was. What order did you watch these in?
I watched The Swan first, then Ratcatcher, then Poison, then the longer one, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar.
Okay.
How did you watch them?
I did Poison first, then Ratcatcher, then The Swan, and then Henry Sugar. So almost similar to you.
I like your version better because The Swan, I feel, which is the first one we're going to talk about, has the most of the stagehand type stuff. And that was kind of shocking to me to get acclimated to the fact that like you're telling the story of this young boy who's being picked on by bullies, and you have like the narrator is like the older version of the boy, and you got the boy in the background, and you got these stagehands coming in, filling in as the bully occasionally, but also like giving the boy props and like helping be a stagehand. So it didn't confuse me very long, but it took a little bit for me to get used to the fact that this is what it was going to be.
Yes. The Swan is also told in an outdoor setting, which is very much a studio with props. And I think watching Poison's a little easier because Poison takes place indoors. So even though it still is in a studio with like moving walls and dropping curtains, it feels because it's all inorganic anyway. It doesn't feel as weird. Whereas to watch The Swan and they're going through like, I don't know, hedgerows or like rows of corn, and they're all like these kind of blocky handmade rows of corn that don't look anything like, real life.
Sure. Yeah. That being said, what did you think of The Swan as a story?
Yeah. So as a story, I was into it at first. Because these are weird because especially this one, there's so little action happening. So much of it is it Rupert Friend? Is that his name? He's the older narrator. Yeah, the older narrator. He's this adult retelling this story. And like, so a lot of the times you can just kind of close your eyes. Like you could watch these without actually watching them and just listen to them and still get the full story, but you're missing the Wes Anderson touches if that's your thing. Anyway, so story wise, I was into it at first because I was kind of intrigued by this story about this, young boy who's being chased by these bullies who are rather cruel. These aren't like, we're going to give you noogies. Like these bullies have a gun and are threatening this kid with a gun, and it escalates from there. And I don't know, for me, as it escalated and got crueler and crueler, I just enjoyed the story less because I felt bad for this kid. And
Yeah.
I just found like these bullies just to be terrible people. And I was no longer interested in what level of cruelty could these boys achieve.
Yeah, I had a similar viewing experience that I was kind of intrigued by what was going on. The train section seemed cruel, but also like survivable in the way that he survives. And you know what I mean? I was kind of like, to me, that's like a Stand By Me level cruelty type of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas once he's climbing trees and having a gun pointed at him, I was just kind of like, okay, is this going to end in like a child murder?
Exactly. Like they've already put this kid's life in danger with the whole train situation.
Right.
And then that wasn't enough for them. You really got the impression that these bullies wanted to see this kid die, which is just awful.
Should this be spoiler? Like, these are so short. How do you not talk about how they end?
I don't think we have to necessarily discuss the ending of it.
Okay.
But I think we can definitely say that we are going to discuss maybe some of the plot elements of these.
Sure.
Just because they are so short, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, it's a story about cruel bullies. What'd you think?
Right. I think I didn't really have this issue with the other three, but with this one, I maybe had a bigger issue with the writing of the story, I would say.
How so?
I'm assuming that Wes Anderson is sticking to the text just because it seems like that's what he's doing here. I haven't read the original writing, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But the end of this one, to be vague, was just like, okay.
It was fantastical.
Right. It felt like the rest of the story was very grounded in what could have been a reality. And then right at the end, it was kind of like, oh, right, he's a children's author.
Right.
Because this feels like the ending of a children's book. It's no longer like a story that actually happened type of thing.
I would imagine that these are verbatim tellings of these short stories. I would be surprised if he changed any bit of dialogue or of narration and then is just adding his visual style to these stories.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's true as well. Which is where you get like, some of those weird narrator interlude type things.
Yeah, where they're cutting to camera and then cutting back to the other cast.
Right. I'll say that this one was not my favorite.
This was not my least favorite, but it was not my favorite either. Okay. It started out fine. Like, I guess visually, I liked this one maybe the most of the three shorts. Even though it is so artificial, there's little things like when he's laying on the train tracks to get the effect of the train tracks going off into the distance, they're raised ever so slightly behind him. So that way you can kind of see them coming to that single point perspective. And I thought exactly. I thought that was a really clever thing to do instead of just having it be a flat train track, just to raise him behind the character a little bit. At one point he's like walking down stairs and the train tracks kind of follow him down the stairs. I thought that was visually really interesting. So yeah, I like visually, as much as Wes Anderson can be too perfect and cute for me, I thought this one kind of worked.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with this one was just that it was pretty humorless to me.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, okay, so we're going to watch a kid get tortured. You know what I mean? At least that's what it was giving me.
Yeah.
Whereas the next one that I watched had some humor in it, which is probably why it's, a notch above, a small notch above. Before we move to that, though, what did you letterbox The Swan?
I gave it 3 stars.
I gave it a 2.5.
Okay. I was between a 2.5 and a 3, but I landed on the 3 on this one.
Nice. The next one I watched was The Rat Catcher.
Same
also
here.
Coming in at 17 minutes. This short starred Ralph Fiennes as the Rat Man, also Richard Ayoade, and Rupert Friend again. You'll see that a bunch of these actors are in multiples of these.
Yes.
And the IMDb plot synopsis for The Ratcatcher was, in an English village, a reporter and a mechanic listen to a ratcatcher explain his clever plan to outwit his prey. So this one I found to be like pretty humorous compared to this one. Like there's a lot in here, not only in the writing, but also in just Ray Fiennes' performance as the Rat Man, who is a guy who literally is a guy. He's an exterminator who's, trying to help them with their rat issue. And he kind of resembles a rat, I would say, has rat-like qualities, even though he looks like a human. And also prides himself in being able to think like a rat in order to outsmart them, essentially. And so, I preferred this one over The Swan just because I find Ray Fiennes funny in this. I also thought Richard Ayoade had a couple funny lines. He had a line in this that I'm not recalling exactly what it was, but he had a line in this where I actually laughed out loud.
Oh.
Which was the only time in all 4 of the shorts that happened.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And normally Wes Anderson movies, at least the good ones, I laugh out loud multiple times.
I'll be curious to see what the good ones are for you when we rank these.
Sure.
Yeah.
What'd you think of The Ratcatcher?
This was my least favorite of the 3.
Okay.
I will agree with you that I liked Ray Fiennes' character and performance. And his character felt to me the most like a Wes Anderson type of character, who's like this. It's a character who's a little odd, but he's very specific about what he does and really encompasses his character. And so I could see why Wes Anderson could have been drawn to this story, just because I'm sure he sees his own style in it. That being said, I think visually this was the most boring of the 3. It all takes place for the most part in like this little town square. There's not a lot to look at. And this one, I think, suffered for me the most from it being narrated and being more tell, don't show. And like, this is a visual medium. So let me give you an example. There's a moment where Ray Fiennes puts a rat and a ferret down his shirt. Again, there are no actual, there's a rat later, but when he does this, he's miming everything. Like he's pretending to hold a rat. He puts it down his shirt. He's pretending to hold a ferret, puts down his shirt. There's nothing in his hands. I love this one probably is the most miming of everything. And then Richard Ayoade goes on, he's the narrator, to describe this voracious battle between these two creatures within his shirt and describing like the thrashing and the movement. And then Ray Fiennes is literally standing there staring at the camera.
With like his shirt's not moving at all.
Right. Nothing's happening.
All right. Sure.
And at this moment, I'm like, Wes Anderson, you're making a movie right now. Like give me something. Like, don't just have Ray Fiennes staring at the camera while nothing's happening. While I get this description of this whole battle going on within his shirt.
See, to me, I understand your perspective, and I don't deny that's an interpretation of it. I saw it as a little charming that they didn't go with anything farther than that, because I think they were trying to keep it to like what you could accomplish as like a stage play,
right?
On some level, and if, like you wouldn't, I guess you could gimmick up somebody's shirt to like make it look like two animals were fighting in their shirt on a stage, but I took it as anything they couldn't do. You couldn't do on a stage play, they weren't going to do here. I mean,
how much funnier would it have been if he mimes putting them in there and then a stagehand goes behind him and like grabs two arms sticking on the back of his shirt and just like moves two ping pong balls around under his shirt?
Sure.
Right. Just
I wouldn't have been against it.
Yeah. Like it's still within his, I'm cute Wes Anderson. Look what, haha, look what we're doing.
Sure.
Like it still would have been his style in these movies, which are not trying to present themselves as real life anyway. I don't know. Like that was the moment where I was like, what am I watching right now?
Sure.
So
yeah, to me, this was just the one of these two.
Yep.
where you had like a very specific performance from somebody, and that performance kind of worked for me.
Yep.
And so it sucked me in, even though I do agree, like the logistics of the Swan were far more intense than pretty much this single location, really only two different shots. I mean, there's a shot from like inside the sewer and stuff like that,
Right,
but for the most part, you just get the sides of these two buildings and their opposite view of the haystack type thing. Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I'll remember this long term, but it was a good 17 minutes for me.
Yeah, it's only 17 minutes, so I didn't hate it,
Mhm.
but
Sure.
not my favorite of the 4.
Yeah. All right, what did you letterbox The Ratcatcher?
This one I gave it 2.5.
This one I gave a 3. We flipped.
Nice. All right, we flipped.
Still very
Good.
close though. It's not like one of us likes one by miles more than the other.
No, neither of us have
That's
been
for
blown
sure.
away by either of these yet.
Okay, the third of the shorter
Shorts.
of the shorts that I watched was titled Poison. Also 17 minutes long. I found it interesting that the 3 shorter shorts were all exactly the same length. That was interesting to me.
And
In minutes.
Yep.
I don't know
Yep.
once you add seconds if they were exactly, but Poison starred Dev Patel, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Ben Kingsley. According to IMDb, the plot synopsis for Poison was: when a poisonous snake slithers onto an Englishman's stomach in India, his associate and a doctor race to save him. So yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch, he's a guy. He's laying in bed. He's frozen stiff, I would say, with fear, because he believes that there's a snake under the book that's resting on his stomach, and if he gets bit by the snake, he will for sure die. And so Dev Patel, his character, discovers him, finds out why he won't move out of bed, why he's so scared, and calls the doctor, played by Ben Kingsley, and they come up with a solution to this problem.
Yes.
And yeah, shenanigans ensue, I would say. What did you think of Poison? Do you want to go first? Or you want me to on this one?
I'll go first on this
Okay.
one. I'll have you go first on Henry Sugar, the longer
That's
one.
fine.
Yeah.
I'm up for whatever.
This is the first one I watched.
Okay.
So for me, there was a slight calibration for the first couple of minutes as I was getting used to, because I did not know what the style was going to be.
Mhm.
This one I'm realizing, this is going to be narrated to the camera. We're going to be living within these moving sets that are, like kind of like watching a stage play as the walls are moving and cranes are coming up and down. But I got used to that pretty quickly, so that didn't bother me too much. I liked the story of this one.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a very simple story about, right, like, as you said, there's this guy, he's laying here, there's a snake on his chest, he can't move, and 2 characters must hatch this elaborate plot to save this man's life. And I thought it was interesting performances from Benedict Cumberbatch, who pretty much had to lay there the whole time.
Mhm.
And like he couldn't do a ton of big reactions because if he moved, that would, feign his character. So he had to do a lot of eye acting, I would say, a lot of face acting, which I thought was pretty good. I liked Dev Patel. And then Ben Kingsley, who I haven't seen a lot of recently, but I really enjoyed Ben Kingsley's character in this. Where the story got weird for me was in the last couple minutes after they pull off their plan to save his life. Benedict Cumberbatch's character has this reaction to the doctor that seems very, I guess, racist or colonialist at the time. Because this story does take place in India, and you've got Benedict Cumberbatch playing the Englishman, and then Dev Patel and Ben Kingsley. I know Dev Patel is from India. Ben Kingsley is English, but I don't know what his ancestry is before that. So I don't know if he's English Indian or what exactly, but he's obviously playing an Indian character in this. So there's kind of this racial commentary that happens at the end of this story, which seemed out of the blue for me, but maybe at the time when Roald Dahl was writing it or what he had experienced, it seemed more present to him or more pertinent to the era. So I think, like, story-wise, that was a little bit of a left field for me, but everything else I liked.
What nationality was Gandhi?
Indian.
Yeah. I mean, Ben Kingsley played Gandhi in
Yeah.
the film Gandhi. So
I mean, but John Wayne played.
sure. I'm
what's
not
his
saying
name?
he's Indian. I'm just saying he's played Indian before.
Yeah. I want to say, I mean, again, he's British, but yeah, he was born in England. I don't know. You go ahead and talk about what you thought about Poison, then I'll jump in from maybe what his background is.
I like this one probably more than the other two.
Okay.
Not by a lot, but by a little. I think probably because the premise was so clear. Like kind of within the first minute, they're like, this is the setup, and now we're gonna see how this plays out. And then you had like people kind of scheming and coming up with plans and deciding not to do that because this is the various outcomes that could happen. And Dev kind of like does the first half of the scheming, and then he brings the doctor in, and then you've got Benedict Cumberbatch just acting his butt off by not moving, essentially. Right. So it's an interesting challenge for an actor. And yeah, it's rare to see Benedict Cumberbatch in anything where he's like restricted, I would say. Not that he's like overacting or anything. It's just, an interesting challenge for any actor, much less a leading man, I would say, to be put in that compromised a position. And I just enjoyed kind of the silliness and wackiness of this. I never once, unlike with the Swan, I never once thought this was going to go dark on me.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I figured it would have some kind of like strange resolution that was fun, and I think generally it did that as far as the snake resolution goes.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
I think maybe that ending, the ending to the ending was a carryover from just a old British guy writing this in the late 60s.
Yeah.
And his lifetime of maybe some prejudice against other people, possibly. I could see that for sure. I don't think it was real thick, but I could see that for sure.
No, it didn't feel dated. It was more just commentary that I was not picking up on because it's commentary for events that happened 100 years ago. I'm not so familiar with.
Sure. Yeah, and I think the Ben Kingsley character too also has a little bit of perspective on like what people think of him versus what he is, type of thing. So I don't know if Wes Anderson baked that into the interpretation or if that's how it's supposed to read. But I do think that was in there a little bit right there at the very end. But yeah, I enjoyed this one probably just because it seemed like everybody on screen was having a lot of fun.
Yep.
And it seemed like the one that had the least amount of narration from the actors. And also the premise was just so incredibly clear when you only have 17 minutes to tell a story, getting right to it and clearly defining the stakes here. I think this one probably does the best of the 17-minute shorts in this collection.
I would agree. This was, of the three shorter ones, this was my favorite.
Nice.
Yeah.
Same here. What did you letterbox it?
Before that, really quickly, Sir Ben Kingsley, born Krishna Pandit Banji.
Okay.
So, Indian name. He's actually born December 31st, same as my wife, so they share a birthday. He was born in England to an English mother and an Indian father.
Okay.
So, he is Indian.
Nice.
Yeah.
Doesn't completely shock me because he played Gandhi. So
right, yeah. No,
I'm not saying back then when Gandhi came out, they couldn't have gotten a non-Indian. They could have for sure.
Right.
But I mean, why would you? People would be up in arms if you didn't get somebody with some Indian in them.
Well, I mean, didn't Ashton Kutcher play? Or no, who's the guy who played Indian in Short Circuit 2? What's his name? Fisher Stevens, yes.
Sure, but
that was exact.
Short Circuit
that was like the
2 is
same
about
era.
a comedy about a robot. Gandhi is like, you know what I mean? For like Indian culture.
Yeah.
He's like one of the guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So Poison was our favorite of the 17-minute ones, but there's one short left. This one is considerably longer than those three. This one clocks in at 37 minutes. It's titled The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Dev Patel, Ben Kingsley, and Richard Ayoade.
Mm-hmm.
And the official IMDb plot synopsis for The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar is chronicles a variety of stories, but the main one follows Henry Sugar, who is able to see through objects and predict the future with the help of a book he stole. Sure. I mean, this one's
steal the book.
I don't think he stole it, but
yeah, he found it.
This one's kind of told in two parts, where it's like the first half is like telling how he got the idea for the second half of the story.
Yeah, this is two shorter shorts made into one longer short.
Sure, although I'm pretty sure it was written as one story.
No, it is. It is.
The first half of the story is giving backstory for some reason.
Correct. Yeah.
What'd you think of this one?
Would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you.
Just because, yeah, why not?
I like this one the most, probably because it just gave us more time to sink into some of these characters and kind of just more time to let things flesh out more. I would say. I do think Poison is probably a better story, a tighter story, but this one, just gave us more to chew on for the most part. I thought pretty much everybody in it was pretty awesome. I didn't even recognize Richard Ayoade until like his maybe second or third shot on screen. He plays like the yogi towards the end.
Yeah. Oh, he's in like full beard and
full beard and body hair.
Yes.
Like they're showing kind of his top half because he's got a robe off one shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So his other side of his chest and his shoulder and his arm is exposed, and he had so much body hair. Like he kind of looked like a werewolf, I would say. He was practically unrecognizable, and they gave him no lines, so that helped too, as far as like not being able to recognize him. But yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch, the short starts and he kind of tells the story of how who tells the story? Does Dev tell the story?
I think Dev Patel is the narrator.
Right.
Again, yeah, I don't think Benedict Cumberbatch is narrating.
Sure.
I think it's Dev Patel.
The gist of the story is Benedict Cumberbatch figures out how to, it's not even read into the future.
No, he figures out how to see objects that a normal eye can't see.
Right. But you're also seeing the future.
No, he can't see the future.
No, he can, because even when he's like reading the cards, he's flipping the card over.
No, he's reading the other side of the card. So that's what he can do. He figured out how to read the other side of an object. So
right.
He would see the back of the card, but was able to read the front of the card, which was facing away from him.
I understand that's what he was doing in that moment, but the way the power is presented in the flashback is like, it's not necessarily just seeing the backs of cards. It's like you can tell when a cart is about to hit you. You know what I mean? That's not seeing, that's seeing the future.
No, he's not seeing the future. What Ben Kingsley's character was able to do was he was able to see without his eyes. Like that's the power. He was able to use his other senses to see. It's kind of like remember Daredevil, the TV show or the comic book? They would show like Daredevil could. I mean, I'm not saying he has superpowers, but in this story,
Daredevil
basically
had superpowers.
No. I'm not saying Ben Kingsley. They never explain how the power works for Ben Kingsley's character. Sure. But essentially, he has figured out through meditation how to train himself to see without his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not predicting that a cart's coming. He can just walk down the hallway blindfolded, and he still knows there's a cart there because of whatever method he used to train himself. They never explain the power itself. You just know that it's done through meditation and
Sure.
years of it. So yeah, I never got that he could see the future. I just got that he could see without seeing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So in the first half of the short, you're seeing the story of Ben Kingsley developing this power, I would say.
Yeah,
skill.
He's discovered by this doctor played by Dev Patel.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a story within a story. Like Henry Sugar is reading this book that is written by Dev Patel, who is recounting the story of Gandhi's character, not Gandhi's character, Ben Kingsley's character, on how he developed this power.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the first half of the short is telling Ben Kingsley's story of learning how to use this power, this skill. And so about halfway through it, the Benedict Cumberbatch character who's reading about Ben Kingsley discovering this skill kind of shuts the book and decides, well, I'm going to teach myself how to do that because I want to win at the casino.
Correct.
So he spends many years practicing and learning how to do this on his own in order to cheat at cards, essentially.
Yep.
And then he cheats at cards, and he finds that winning at cards through cheating is there's no satisfaction in it.
Right, because you know if you're going to win or not.
Right.
Yeah.
All the risk is gone, so all the fun is gone from it.
And they set this character up as being a guy who loves to gamble. He loves to bet. He loves to make anything a game. Like he lives for the chase of the win.
Mm-hmm. Then towards the end, he finds another reason to live life, I would say. We'll leave that out, exactly what that might be. But since he's kind of lost his purpose as far as gambling or cheating at gambling, he finds a new way to use this skill that's more satisfying. Yeah, and I like this one mostly because I thought the story was great. It was generally easy to understand, and everybody on screen seemed like they were having a lot of fun. It really sold me when Benedict Cumberbatch was coming in and out of the scene dressed in different
That was my
costumes.
favorite scene. Yeah, so this movie or this short has multiple, I'm not calling wonders, I'm calling long takes.
Sure.
Okay? Because I know wonder is a pejorative word on this podcast. So, or trigger
Only
word.
for you. You're the only one that is bothered by it.
Yeah, so like there are moments where they're telling the story and Benedict Cumberbatch's character is kind of walking through the cities, going in and out of buildings. And that's all these sets that are dropping and opening up, kind of like a stage play. But those were all long shots where the camera was not cutting away. And it was just a lot of coordination of the sets. I assume it was those were all wonders. But then, there's that scene where he is talking about his travels and he keeps stepping off stage and coming back in different, I say stage here, it's out of frame. And then comes back immediately in a different costume. Obviously, they had to do cuts. There's no way he did changes that quick.
Sure.
But it's so fluid that it works. And the little touch that I noticed was that he has a shadow at all times. And when he steps off camera, you can still see his shadow, and then it follows him back on camera. So I thought that was really clever. It kind of gave it that sense of realism. Like, you know that they're stopping the camera. He's changing outfits and he's walking back into frame. But by the fact that they use a little CG magic to leave the shadow there, just kind of made it a little bit more immersive for me.
Sure. Interesting. I also liked that this one was generally, I don't know if the word is kind-hearted, but wholesome. Like where the story ends up was pretty wholesome.
I agree. I think this is my favorite story of them because this Henry Sugar character had such an arc of learning this power and then using the power and then saying, what else can I do with this? Like this is give me what I need.
Sure.
How can I use this for power to fulfill myself, my soul, however you want to put it?
Yeah, maybe the only thing it was missing was like a resolution to Ben Kingsley's character. Like you just kind of leave it where Dev Patel's doctor left his writing. Well,
doesn't he just end up, spoiler, okay, stop if you don't care. Or stop if you care. Or skip ahead. Doesn't he die?
Who? Ben Kingsley?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah, because I think that's in the story, is that Dev Patel is recounting this story.
Okay.
Ben Kingsley comes to this hospital. He retells his story. He walks away all blindfolded. Ben Kingsley Dev Patel finds this amazing and goes to see his next performance and then finds out that he died and then blames
That's right.
himself for,
Okay.
not protecting this man.
You're right. I remember that now.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you just heard that, I still would watch it. I don't think
It doesn't.
that's not the
ruin
gist. That's not the gist of the short, for sure.
No, it doesn't ruin it.
Yeah. I like this one a lot. I think it was the most charming.
Yeah.
And the most fleshed out. I mean, just by nature of being more than twice as long as the other ones individually. And also, I thought you got the best of at least Benedict Cumberbatch, Dev Patel, and Ben Kingsley. They were great in Poison as a trio. But here, I think they just had a little more to chew on. And seeing Richard Ayoade as a yogi was hilarious to me.
I think this is some of the best use of the Wes Anderson cute dollhouse.
Okay.
Because he was using it more to either A, there's a great scene we talked about with the costume changes, which was fun, or he was using it to move the character through space without actually moving the character. And I thought that was kind of fun as the sets were changing around Benedict Cumberbatch. That all seemed to kind of work for me.
I also felt like this one had the least amount of stagehand interference type of stuff.
Yeah, there wasn't people handing them props or or there wasn't a lot of miming either in this one. Like there were actual props and things like that.
And because of the framing of the first half being a story read by Benedict Cumberbatch, there seemed like less of like on-screen narrators talking to the camera on this one.
Yes.
Maybe there wasn't less. It just felt like less to me.
I want to say when Dev Patel was in the hospital room with Richard Ayoade and I keep saying Gandhi, Ben Kingsley, that had a lot of like Dev Patel turning to the camera.
Sure.
But I don't remember it once it was more of Benedict Cumberbatch's story. It seemed more, it was just like voiceover narration and not on-screen narration.
Right.
I mean, it's because Dev Patel was not in a lot of those scenes with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Makes sense. All right. Anything else for the wonderful story of Henry Sugar?
Before I give my Letterboxd rating on this, do you know what's crazy?
I don't know what's crazy.
Well, this is not crazy. If you go just by Letterboxd rating, this is my favorite thing Wes Anderson has ever done.
Wow. Do you think that's true, or just your Letterboxd ratings are slightly off over time?
I think I maybe need to re-examine some Wes Anderson movies, but as we get into the list, I don't think he's ever blown me away.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
As of right now, this is my favorite Wes Anderson project ever.
At what Letterboxd rating?
At 4 stars.
4 stars. Wow.
Yeah.
I give this a 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. That's it for the 4 Roald Dahl based short films directed by Wes Anderson on Netflix. Go check those out if you get the time. If they could only watch one, let's quick rank them. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Let's quick rank them. I would go number 4, The Swan. Least liked that. Then The Ratcatcher. Then Poison. Then The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, which is also the order in which I watched them. I'm realizing.
Interesting.
How about you?
I would go number 4, Ratcatcher, 3, Swan, 2, Poison, and 1, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar.
Nice.
I think if you only watch one short, definitely watch Henry Sugar. I think that's we agree that's our favorite one. I think it's worth everyone's time. It's 39 minutes. It's an easy 39 minutes. I think if you want to get a taste of what the shorts are like, probably Poison's the best one.
And if you really dug that, then you could probably watch the other two and you'd find something in them.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Swan's the visually most daring, maybe is the best way to put it.
Sure.
Like if you like the Wes Anderson style, you'll probably like the Swan, just visually wise. But
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I like his presentation, and that one just kind of was a little overload for me with the not only his specific style, but also like all the little touches he introduced with like stage hands and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this isn't just a dollhouse. This is like a dollhouse explaining a dollhouse.
Right. And then there's also, he throws in a lot of stop animation into the Swan also. We didn't mention that all. There's stop animation in the Swan and in the Ratcatcher.
Yep.
I don't think there's any stop animation in Henry Sugar.
I kept waiting for that to be stop animation in Poison. It never went there.
They could have done one thing if they had more animals in it, we could say.
That's what I thought they were going to do,
yeah,
and
exactly.
then they didn't do that.
Yep.
All right. Let's get into our top 10 Wes Anderson movies. Wes Anderson has 11 feature films. I've seen all 11. Kyle has seen 10 of the 11. And how many did you watch this week?
I watched 2 Wes Anderson movies for the first time this week on top of 4 shorts. So I've consumed 6 Wes Anderson projects in the last 5 days.
Nice.
It's been a lot.
Awesome. But you got to 10. You have an official top 10 list.
I have an official top 10. And maybe I'll have a top 11 someday.
Awesome.
To be honest, before I see my 11th one, I'd rather rewatch some of these on this 10 because maybe I need to give some of these a second chance.
I mean, you got to watch one more just to say you've seen all of them, right? You can't be that close and not ever watch that 11th one.
I don't know. You and Zach might give me a choice between 2 movies, and one of them could be Asteroid City. So then, who knows?
Speaking of Asteroid City, that's my number 11.
Yeah, I remember you not liking this one at all when you did a top 10 last 10.
I feel like with Wes Anderson movies, the ones that are really good for me, for my taste, I can attach myself to them pretty easily. The ones that I don't particularly like the first time out, I will drag my heels on rewatching them.
Okay.
But the majority of them that I've rewatched, forced myself to rewatch, I've definitely enjoyed them more. Some of them miles more on second viewing. And I think potentially Asteroid City has that potential.
Okay.
But we won't know until I get to rewatch it. And as it stands right now, I thought Asteroid City was it was a cold movie.
It was cold. Okay.
That had impressive visuals. It's probably the most strict on the presentation of any of his movies that I've ever seen, as far as we're only going to take flat shots of everything and everything's going to look like layers on a set type of thing. But my biggest issue with it wasn't that the presentation was impressive. It's more just that there were a lot of characters and I didn't give a crap about any of them because they all were emotionless.
Yep.
So that's why it's my number 11. What's your number 10?
My number 10 is the Darjeeling Limited. And I would say that this is the only Wes Anderson movie that I do not like.
My number 10 is also the Darjeeling Limited.
Perfect.
So we agree. And also I don't like it either.
Yeah. This one's Owen Wilson, Adrian Brody, and Jason Schwartzman, who play 3 brothers, and they're traveling across India via train. I think maybe their father passed away, and that's why they're reunited. I found this one to be incredibly boring and felt so long. And this is only 90 minutes. This is one of his shorter movies. And if you had asked me before I looked up how long was the Darjeeling Limited, I said at least 2 hours. This movie just dragged for me. I only saw it the one time, and it was probably around 2007. So it's been a while since I've seen this one. Every Wes Anderson movie I've seen once, with the exception of one. So he's not a director who I revisit often. Sure. But yeah, with this one, the story I found to be not interesting. I think the movie thinks it's being clever and it was not clever for me whatsoever. And at one point they get off the train, and that's when the movie got even worse. Like it was fine on the train, and then they get off the train, and it just did not work for me whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is another one that I think I've seen it twice, and I remember enjoying it more the second time, but still wouldn't say it's a movie I like.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if, it's probably been another 5 years since my last attempted rewatch. If I was to put it on again, would it build even more? I don't know. It's probably not fair, but like with Wes Anderson, I would give a movie a third shot for something that I don't prefer. You know what I mean? Most directors will not be given that leeway.
Yeah.
Or that opportunity.
I think because Wes Anderson's style is so specific, sometimes you have to watch it twice, because the first time you're just kind of taking it in. And whether maybe you can't take it all in, like both the visual style and the characters and the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just too much information for our small brains, James.
Could be.
Yeah.
My number 9.
Can I go number 9?
Please.
Okay. I want it's the same as yours again. My number 9, which this is a first time watch. I watched this last night. The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
We didn't match.
We did not match there. Okay. So yeah, this is, I don't know why I never saw this one, just never got around to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to watch this. This is kind of, and I would say this is still an earlier Wes Anderson movie. This is his 3rd or 4th movie.
2004. I mean,
4th movie.
Sure.
Right?
I mean,
Bottle Rockets.
You're talking like 15 years after his debut. So I wouldn't say it's early.
No,
Maybe
Bottle Rocket was his debut. That was 90.
Right. That was 96.
Yeah, this is 2004. This is only 12.
Oh, okay.
This is 8 years later.
I was thinking 2014.
Oh, no. 8 years later.
I mean, if it's your 4th movie, is that early?
Well, okay. He is not in full Wes Anderson mode yet. I think what we describe as Wes Anderson, he hasn't locked in.
Right.
Like, there is one shot at the beginning where Bill Murray is walking from the back of a boat to the front of a boat.
Sure.
And it kind of tracks him, but it's not deadlocked on him. It's just kind of like a normal shot of like, a camera tracking a guy walking across the boat. And if he had done that shot now, it would have been like almost 2-dimensional, like deadlocked on as it followed him across the boat from one end to the other.
The way I define it is like he used to occasionally do the dollhouse as a punctuation mark.
Which he does in this.
At some point, he decided that was the entire movie.
Right. So like there's a moment in this where they are walking through, like they first show you the ship, and it's a cutaway, and it's cool looking. You're like, oh, that's kind of cool to see this dollhouse cutaway. And then later there's a scene where characters are kind of moving through the entire ship in a long track. And again, you can see the cutaways, you can see the supports. You know that you're watching kind of a stage presentation. But it worked because it's only that one moment in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're right, now his movies, everything is the dollhouse cutaway.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed this because I was getting those Wes Anderson moments without it being the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
What this didn't have for me was characters that work. I just did not care for the Bill Murray character whatsoever.
And he's like a main character.
He is the character in this.
Right,
yeah.
right.
I thought some of the side ones were kind of fun, like Kate Blanchett and Willem Dafoe.
Mm-hmm.
But like the Bill Murray himself, his character, Steve Zissou, did not care for Steve Zissou. He was kind of a jerk and doesn't seem to really learn a ton throughout the movie.
Sure.
So yeah, it was fine. Megan, about an hour in, she was like, I'm bored, I'm going to bed. So she just dipped out of it. She 45 minutes ruled this one herself, but
sure,
I kept going with it.
Nice.
What's your number 9? Sorry, that was a more review just because I watched it for the first time.
That's all good.
Yeah.
My number 9 is The French Dispatch from just a few years ago.
Okay.
This is a this is a, what do they call those things? Anthology film.
Yep.
Where it's like 4 different stories with this kind of framing device of a newspaper and people pitching stories and writing stories for the newspaper. And I think the issue is in its anthology-ness. Like, there's one story in here that I really like. The Concrete Masterpiece, I think, is a great short within this.
Which one's the Concrete Masterpiece?
It's the one with the artist who gets sent to prison.
Oh, Benicio del Toro and the French actress whose name I can't remember right now.
Léa Seydoux.
Thank you. Yes.
Who's a prison guard that he discovers is kind of his muse.
Yep.
Type of thing. And they fall in love. And I think that story is very good, but it's 1/4 of this full movie. And the other 3 parts are not necessarily bad. They just did absolutely nothing for me. Not only that, but it probably ended on like the biggest nothing for me. You kind of have this last segment with what's his name? Jeffrey Wright.
Oh,
at the end of it.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey Wright. He's like a journalist who has some controversy. I don't know. I don't remember the particulars of that one. But yeah, I was not interested in that story at all. And it's kind of the end of it. I think there's like a little wrap up segment about the newspaper itself. But for the most part, that's the last of the anthology stories. And it ended on like a whimper for me. Whereas that artist story was kind of more towards the beginning, middle of the film. So great cast. I think if you're a fan of Wes Anderson or the people that are in his movies, then you got to watch this one just to see them just kind of come in and out of these short stories. And it's a little bit of like a bird watching activity, but with actors. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh, okay. They're in this. Interesting type of thing. Some of them have very little to do, but they're in there. Anyway, French Dispatch, my number 9.
Nice. My number 8 is Rushmore, and it's here because I do not remember this movie at all. I saw it 20 years ago in college.
You definitely have to rewatch Rushmore.
I have to. Okay. I may have watched this on VHS. This is how long ago that I saw this movie. Okay. So,
sure.
On a TV that had a built-in VHS player.
I mean, it may have been one of the last VHSs you watched because the movie came out in 98.
Right.
DVD was taking over at that point. So
this may, I'm going to say right now, the last VHS I ever watched was Rushmore.
You don't know that to be true, but you're guessing.
No, I definitely watched Sound of Music on VHS for a school project, and then my VHS player ate the Sound of Music. So,
okay.
But we're gonna officially.
The Hills weren't alive.
No, the Hills were too alive in the VHS player. Ate the tape. Anyway, so I think this is the first Jason Schwartzman movie I ever saw, to my knowledge. This might be one of his first movies.
Might be the first one.
It might be. All I really remember is Jason Schwartzman plays this student named Max, who is in love with his teacher, right, at a boarding school. Bill Murray is also in love with this teacher, who's maybe Bill Murray's like the dean or something like that. There's some sort of weird rivalry between the two over this woman's affection. And it ends with Miss Saigon being performed on stage, which is a very Wes Anderson moment. But I did not know that it was going to be a Wes Anderson moment at the time. And that's all I have to say about Rushmore. I could recap it for you.
Rushmore was Jason Schwartzman's first movie.
It was. Okay. I remember the trailers more for this because the trailers had this kind of like weird communist populist thing going on.
Sure. The poster too has a little bit
the poster with the fist
propaganda
raised
poster.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. My number 8 was your number 9, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Okay.
So we're kind of aligned that not my favorite of all of his movies. I will say I like this movie. I enjoy it. Seen it at least twice. Yeah, there's not much more for me past what it is type of thing. There's like nothing that makes it fully stand out in my brain. It probably gets some bonus points just because it's not completely Dollhouse style.
Right. Yeah.
And so I tend to like those more. But I also have some very dollhouse style movies higher up on my list. So I don't know. If the story was stronger, it would definitely be higher. For sure. From a visual perspective, if we were just ranking the visuals, it would be higher.
Yes.
But the story kind of lets it down for me.
Yeah.
My number 8.
My number 7 is your previously mentioned number 9, The French Dispatch.
Okay.
I had trouble
We're
placing
very
this one.
aligned on these low movies.
We are so far. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
maybe Rushmore might be the outlier for you
Sure.
versus me. Yeah.
Yep.
This one has moved on my list. This is anywhere between number 5 and 9 as I was making this list.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ended up at 7. And I think why I was having trouble placing it is because the same reasons you had to say. This movie is very uneven, where it has some great moments, like the that first story with Benicio del Toro and Lea Seydoux.
Mhm.
I think was the best one.
Sure.
I just remember there was a Timothée Chalamet story in this one about like the French revolutionaries, which I completely forgot about.
I don't remember it at all, even
Yeah, I
after
don't remember
reading the description.
I liked the Jeffrey Wright's performance. Maybe not the story,
Okay.
but his performance itself. He was kind of doing a take on James Baldwin,
Mhm.
who was a famous author and speaker. And I kind of like what he was doing with that character, but I don't remember the story at all. And then I think there's a part with like Kate Blanchett wearing weird teeth, talking about art or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But or it could be Tilda Swinton. I'm not even sure which actress it was. By far, my favorite part of this movie was when Owen Wilson is doing a quick tour of whatever town they're in. It's Ennui. It was very cute of Wes Anderson to call a town Ennui.
Sure.
And he's like on a bicycle, but the whole scenery is moving behind him. Again, it's very like stage play-y. There's characters interacting with him, kind of whipping by. But I thought it was so clever how it was staged.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the movie kind of let me down from there. So it started strong, even though it started like my favorite part of it was maybe the most dollhousey part of it. But it worked so well to like give you this background of this town in this like 2-minute sequence that was very hyperactive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that the dollhouse works pretty well when he starts montaging things.
Yeah.
In it, and like giving you a lot of story really fast, but like whipping the visuals around.
Yes.
And then stopping, at 90 degrees to every frame.
Versus like just a guy walking upstairs for 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it doesn't work for me, which I think is how this one started too.
My number 7 is probably controversial for other people who are into Wes Anderson. It's 2001's The Royal Tenenbaums.
Interesting. Okay.
Which I would say, starting from here, are movies that I like from Wes Anderson. I like Life Aquatic too, but like movies that I don't mind rewatching, I would say. In fact, The Royal Tenenbaums, I just rewatched. Like I finished it right before we got on. And maybe it would even be higher if I had made this list right after. I don't know. I need to rewatch the ones above it as well. So
yep.
Kind of unfair. But I'm going to leave it here at number 7 for now. I do find charm in this movie. I definitely like that it's pre-locking into the style. Mm-hmm. So you still have like some camera movements that aren't quite as harshly rigid as the style becomes later on. And I also think that there's moments in this movie that are maybe not laugh out loud, but chuckle worthy, I would say. I also like when Ben Stiller gets angry. Like I really like his character in Mystery Men, Angry Man, or Mr. Furious, where he's just angry for no reason. That's a superpower. In The Royal Tenenbaums, he's like the angry son who's mad because he has daddy issues and his wife died. So he has reasons to be angry, but he's like very angry throughout the whole movie. And so I just enjoy his performance in particular in The Royal Tenenbaums. But also, I don't know, some of it just falls flat for me. Like most of the Gwyneth Paltrow stuff and the Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson stuff, which is a lot of it, doesn't really work for me. So my number 7.
Nice. I forgot Ben Stiller was in The Royal Tenenbaums. Like, it's interesting that he made a movie with a bunch of people he did not normally work with. Because he's
and
a
then
very
he
locked
was
in
never
cast.
in another one again.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's other one-offs in these other movies, but he very much uses the same cast or similar cast from movie to movie.
But for some reason, he just did the one and then isn't in any of the other ones.
Maybe Ben Stiller's like, that guy's a jerk. I don't want to work with him.
Sure.
My number 6 is Isle of Dogs.
My number 6 is Isle of Dogs.
All right. This is kind of a weird one.
Yep.
Yeah, it's stop animated.
That's a bingo.
There's a bingo. It takes place in possibly like a futuristic Japanese city. Am I correct? Like a near future.
I don't know. I thought it was actually like Tokyo or like I think they actually give it a name, don't they?
Oh yeah, no, it takes place in Japan, but in the
Right.
future. I thought like maybe the near future.
I've seen it once. I don't remember.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a movie about I think there's like a flu or a sickness that broke out among the dogs. So all the dogs are being banished to an island, and then there's a boy who goes to this island to try and rescue his own dog. And there, the dogs talk. I think the dogs even talk to the boy, so like there's no question about can they communicate. But what I liked about this one is like there's humor to it, but there's a little darkness to this one too. And I like Wes Anderson when he puts a little darkness in his stories. And I think sometimes his stories with the dollhouse stuff can be like a little too pure and bright or just flat. And in this one, like they're talking about these dogs are going to be essentially exterminated and like people get hurt. And it's, I think it's a kid safe movie for the most part, but it, there's also says like there's danger in the world, and this movie doesn't shy away from danger.
Yeah. Film is set in the fictional Japanese city of Megasaki.
So not a real city.
Not a real city, also not the future of some real city. You know what I mean?
Letterboxd says in the future, an outbreak of canine flu.
Weird.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like his animated movies. If there was, let's say he made a non-animated version of this, I'd probably like it less. I think the presentation on this one does a lot of heavy lifting. It's kind of an adventure movie. The dogs are going on an adventure. They're trying to find their way home. I don't remember the details, but they have to get from point A to point B, and the boy is trying to help them on some level, if memory serves. I think it's a beautifully designed movie. Like just the graphic design behind it is super impressive and goes farther than, most of Wes Anderson's movies. The production design goes farther than most movies even come close to attempting.
Yeah.
And this movie in particular definitely is an example of that. Like just the sheer number of logos they had to design just to put this thing on screen.
Yeah.
Type of thing is super impressive. The sushi scene is amazing for stop motion. Do you remember that at all?
I don't remember the sushi scene. No.
Go to YouTube, look up sushi scene Isle of Dogs. It's amazing. It's great. And will kind of surprise you that it's even stop motion. It won't surprise you, but it's impressive. Anyway, yeah, I think it's charming, and also I like it for the reason you gave, specifically that a kid could watch this. There will be enough danger and enough stakes that they might remember it at the end, but also it's not too dark at the same time.
Right. Yeah. All right, my number 5 is the other first-time watch for me, a movie I had never seen from Wes Anderson, and this is his first one, Bottle Rocket from 1996.
That's a bingo.
Also your number 5. Okay.
Also my number 5.
All right. So I always find it interesting to watch the first movie from any director who has a very specific style. Because it's always about, can I see that style in this movie? And I would say visually, I didn't see a lot of what we now know as Wes Anderson in Bottle Rocket. This movie is more or less shot pretty standardly.
Standard mid-90s indie.
Exactly, yeah. Maybe like that final heist in the warehouse was a little Wes Anderson-y at times.
There's a shot where they're sitting in the foreground looking at a warehouse through binoculars.
Oh,
And like
yes.
the framing and the distance of like people in the foreground and the perfect angle of the title of the building like on it. I was like, this is absolutely one frame of the movies he's making now.
You're right. That is the style will come to know. Yes.
Right. And he locked the camera on a tripod for that shot. But the majority of the movie is not necessarily shaky cam, but the camera moves with
It's a lot of
characters
handheld cam in this. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
What I did like about this movie, and I think what this movie shows where Wes Anderson can be successful, is the characters. I mean, especially Owen Wilson's character, Digman or whatever he was, as kind of like this hapless leader of even more hapless group of bandits. Like this guy thinks he is the smartest person in the room. He thinks he's got everything covered, and the minute things go wrong, it just all crumbles. But like that character is written so confidently and so quirkily that I was just loving watching Owen Wilson in this movie. And I think that is what I was getting more from Bottle Rocket as the first Wes Anderson movie. I'm like, oh, he can make interesting characters. And Owen Wilson's an example of that for sure. Yeah,
his character is like projects confidence, but ultimately is pretty insecure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Really, the more secure one is Luke Wilson.
Right.
In a weird way. Even though he's the one that starts off, in a some kind of institution in that film. It's also the rare love story in a Wes Anderson film. It's not often that you get like a kind of somewhat traditional love story.
Oh, you do. That's right. With Owen Wilson or like Luke Wilson and the maid whose name I cannot remember.
Right. And it's also a heist movie, which is fun.
But it's such a small stakes heist movie.
Sure.
But
the scene where they've got kind of the day laborers up against the wall, with their hands up, and they're all running around in yellow jumpsuits, with little microphones on, and they can't get their disguises on
their
fast
masks
enough.
on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's hilarious. I really enjoy Bottle Rocket. I think it's fun and funny and informative if you're a Wes Anderson fan, to just be like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
You're right. Yeah, I'm glad I got around to it.
Nice.
All right, my number 4. Oh, God.
Before you go, I'm also thinking of the shot where he's in the pool. Luke Wilson's in the pool, and he's like got his arms up on the side of the pool, and he's seeing the maid for the first time, and it's cutting to like a locked off shot of him in the pool, kind of like angled down, but perfectly perpendicular.
Right.
And then his viewpoint is her walking out of the room, and everything is like perfectly centered. That's another shot where you're like, okay, this is Wes Anderson.
I see where we're going.
Before he decided this was the entire movie, this is where he got it from. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Wes Anderson no longer knows how to move a camera. Right. Can only just gimbal it around.
Or no longer wants to, evidently. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yep. All right, my number 4 is the Royal Tenenbaums. I put this one here because I haven't seen this in 20 years. I saw it in theaters when it came out, like in college. But this movie left an impression on me. And I can't exactly put what it is, but there is definitely a lot of, I don't know, maybe angst in this movie or drama in this movie between this family. And for whatever reason, like those emotions have stuck with me. When I think of this movie, I think of really feeling those emotions in the theater. So visually, I'm sure there's Wes Anderson stuff in this. But for me, it was just the emotion of the characters, how that was portrayed across the screen has always stuck with me. And this is one that I definitely want to rewatch. So I put it at 4 just because I have this strong emotional connection to it, even though I can't make it very specific.
Nice. My number 4 is the Grand Budapest Hotel from 2014, which is number 210 on my top 600, which is the lowest rated movie on my top 600. There's nothing Wes Anderson from 210 to 600. But there's a couple things from 210 up. So yeah, Grand Budapest Hotel, very fast moving movie. almost completely dollhouse style. There's a couple of more inventive shots that are still very stylized for sure. The skiing shot comes to mind.
Yes.
There's a couple of them that are not necessarily dollhouse, but are definitely stylized. It's not just a handheld camera for sure. But I like the pace of this movie, the quirkiness of the characters, the fact that there is a very clear plot and a goal that people are trying to get to that is pretty clearly defined. That's not always the case for all of these movies. Some of them, I feel like they meander a little bit, and that's not the case with Grand Budapest Hotel. Yeah, I enjoy the movie as kind of like a romp and a little bit of a heist like movie, and a chase movie as well. So my number 4.
I'm trying to bring up my top 600 here to see if I can figure out where Wes Anderson ranks, but my computer's running slow. So
do you have any in your top 600?
I'm sure I have a couple in my top 600.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find any. Oh, it also might not be loading fully. I'm not sure. Let's try one more.
What works better for me is just click edit, do a search there, and then it'll search against your whole 600 that way.
It's all right. I'll figure this out later. This is not interesting to listen to at all. Okay. My number 3 is Fantastic Mr. Fox.
All right.
Which I believe is also a Roald Dahl adaptation.
Yes.
Another stop animated movie about a group of forest animals who are, I guess, this is another heist movie, right? They're trying to defend themselves against a factory or a group of farmers. Might be it.
It's farmers.
Okay.
In my memory. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the one that I've seen twice. And I think this is one of his better representations of his dollhouse style because it's all stop animation. And it kind of works to have like these 2D shots of animals digging around the grass like they're in an anthill, or to be moving through these tunnels. And I think his style works really well in this movie. And then the story is just a lot of fun too. You have these animals who are going on a heist. They're planning something, but like Isle of Dogs, it has this sense of danger. Like they're not just, trying to steal acorns from a squirrel. Like they're trying to stop farmers that want to kill them, that have guns, that want to poison them. Animals in this story do get hurt. But again, I think for most kids, they could watch this if they can handle some of the more scary elements of it. My son has definitely seen this one and liked it.
Nice. My number 3 is number 160 on my top 600. It's Moonrise Kingdom from 2012. I like this movie quite a bit. It's very charming. It's a coming of age drama / comedy, probably. It's about this kid in this world's equivalent of the Boy Scouts.
Yep.
And he's on a camping trip. He doesn't like his other campers. He's kind of isolated from them, and he has a pen pal / crush on this girl who I believe is like with the Girl Scouts or something like that, this world's equivalent type of thing. And so they both, while they're on a camping trip, run away together. And meanwhile, the camp counselors of sorts decide to go, or they try to find them because they've run away. So it's a little bit of a chase movie, but also amongst that chase is these two young people kind of in young puppy love with each other and experiencing each other. And just trying to figure out what life is as kind of people who are interested in each other, but also like just escaped situations where they were the odd man out or woman out in this case. I just find it incredibly charming. It's a simple story. It's fairly short from my memory, 94 minutes. So it'll get you in, it'll get you out. It definitely has the dollhouse feel to it, but because of the outdoor nature of the vast majority of the movie, it doesn't feel quite as claustrophobic as some of his other movies feels more open and beautiful. Yeah, I enjoy this one quite a bit.
Nice. My number 2 is the previously mentioned, I guess they're all going to be previously mentioned at this point, Grand Budapest Hotel. This is probably Wes Anderson's best showing of his dollhouse style, given that this whole thing takes place in a hotel.
In live action, I would agree.
Right. I should say in live action. Yes. Yeah. I don't really know what to say. A lot of people think this is his best movie. Like, this is probably his opus amongst most fans of his. And I definitely like this. I get this as my number 2. It's a dense story. I believe it's a story within a story within a story.
Mm-hmm.
And it does some interesting things where each part of the story is framed at a different aspect ratio. I think it gets narrower as we go farther back in time, which I thought was an interesting way to tell the story. And then you also have this great relationship between Ray Fiennes as his concierge, and then I won't call him Tony Ravioli, but I know that's not his name.
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Yes, the kid who plays kind of his protege,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of their relationship they have as there's whole backdrop. I think World War II is happening in the background. So this is another Wes Anderson movie that I would like to revisit. I was looking. I don't have any Wes Anderson movies on my top 600 because my top 600s are only movies that I either gave 4 stars to or gave a heart to. And I'm not giving 4 stars or a heart to any Wes Anderson feature-length movie.
Sure. Fair enough.
Tony Revolori,
Okay.
not Tony Ravioli.
Sure. My number 2, my second favorite Wes Anderson movie, is also my number 97 on my top 600. So this is a top 100 movie for me.
Oh, wow.
And it's, of course, Fantastic Mr. Fox. This movie really took me by surprise. I don't know why, because in 2009, I was very aware of Wes Anderson and had been watching Wes Anderson movies for the better part of a decade. And yet this movie came out. I didn't watch it. Then I had my nieces and nephews and my son with me, and they were having a sleepover, and I was trying to find something that was age appropriate for kids in their early teens and also like a 7-year-old. And it's kind of hard to find that. And for some reason, we decided to rent Fantastic Mr. Fox. And then I watched it without knowing it was a Wes Anderson movie.
Oh.
Yeah. And about like halfway into it, I was like, this movie is weird, but I'm really enjoying this. And then at the end of it, it told me who the director was. And I was like, that totally makes sense that this is Wes Anderson. I think this is the best I think his animated movies show off this film, we said it a million times in this episode, this dollhouse style filmmaking. It's the best showcase for that style. Probably because that's how you storyboard it, and it's going to be exactly what you want it to be, no matter what. You don't even have to lean on the performances of actors at that point. You can meticulously detail every single movement, and I believe he does in his 2 animated movies. And didn't really know the story of the Fantastic Mr. Fox. Not like a story that I read in books, and then there was an adaptation, so the story was new to me. For some reason, the choice to not have the animals cuss, nor beep out their cuss words, but just have them say the word cuss, was like the perfect choice you could make for some reason. Again, I'm curious if the original story, do the characters say the word cuss, or do they even cuss? Was that like a Wes Anderson thing? I don't know.
Great question.
But even more than the 4 shorts we discussed earlier from the Netflix collection, this movie makes me want to see what a Wes Anderson big budget Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie would be.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Even if Timothée Chalamet was in it?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that as long as it was Wes Anderson. Because Wes Anderson, it doesn't matter if you're the biggest star in the world, you're still going to be in a Wes Anderson movie.
Very true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could put Tom Cruise on the screen. He's just going to be another player in Wes Anderson's world, basically.
What if Dead Reckoning Part 2 is directed by Wes Anderson?
That would be a change.
Like, can you imagine like Tom Cruise like, okay, for this mission, we're going to need spy glasses. We're going to need suction cups. I don't know. Like, just imagine like a Wes Anderson like
the inventory montage.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I'd watch it.
Oh man.
Based on the last one, it might be more interesting than what we're going to end up with. Anyway,
okay.
Fantastic Mr. Fox, super fun movie, and thankfully appropriate for all ages.
Yeah. Something I forgot to mention about Steve Zissou is that there is multiple shootouts, or there's like one extended action scene in that movie.
Sure.
And I don't know if I've ever seen Wes Anderson do action since.
Yeah. I mean, in most movies, he puts most action off screen.
Right. Like you might hear it or you see the after effects of it.
Mm-hmm.
But like in this one, there is Bill Murray with a pistol just randomly shooting around at like all these guys with AK-47s, and there's blood, and it was something else. So I was like, oh, I did not expect this from Wes Anderson.
What's your number one?
My number one is going to be Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning number 2, which he's going to hopefully direct. So no, my number one is Moonrise Kingdom.
Nice.
And yeah, this one just feels wholesome of all the Wes Anderson movies. And for reasons you said, like it's this tale of kind of first love. These two kids, they run away. There are stakes, but they're not super high stakes. It's mostly scoutmasters who are worried that these kids are lost. I think maybe Bill Murray might play like the father of the daughter who gets a little huffy about the fact that his daughter has a crush. But everything is just kind of toned down a little bit. And like you said, it's outdoors, so you're getting the Wes Anderson style, but you don't feel so cramped because you're not in a literal dollhouse. You're still get to be in this bright, sunny, kind of bucolic summer camp place. So yeah, this one just kind of makes me feel the best of all his movies. And if any of them that I would want to rewatch, not because I need to rewatch, but this is the one I want to rewatch the most, just because I know I'll have a good time with it. They're the ones I think I need to rewatch because I might have missed something or I get something new out of them being this far away from where they were made.
Nice. Totally agree with everything you just said. My number one is number 66 on my top 600 and the highest ranking Wes Anderson movie in my top 600, Rushmore from 1998.
So this is where we're the farthest apart. I feel like everything else we were pretty much
pretty close,
except Rushmore.
And
with the
I think you will change your mind.
Oh, I'm sure if I watch it again, I'll have a much different opinion. It's been 20 years and like how many leaps in video technology since I've seen this movie.
Especially since you watched Bottle Rocket for the first time recently, right?
Yeah.
And it's landed middle of your list.
Exactly. Yep.
I think Rushmore is a very natural progression from Bottle Rocket. Bottle Rocket is like a first-time filmmaker occasionally making first-time filmmaker mistakes, I would say. Like with characterization, like certain characters don't get as much screen time as they probably should. And it's a little, I don't know, it's just not as tight as Rushmore. So Rushmore lives in this world where you've still got a guy who's figuring things out. And so there's still a little bit of that 90s indie style of shooting with the handhelds. There's a little more specifically locked off shots. And the dollhouse style kind of makes its first appearance in the sections that are an actual representation of a stage play.
Right. They're actual stage plays. Yes.
Right. So there's an actual stage play towards the end of the film as a piece of the film. And during those sections, you can see the dollhouse style. And so not only will it kind of be a visual reference for what's to come, it's not so harshly stylized as what's to come.
Right. Yeah.
There's still a playfulness to it in more ways than just playful in the dollhouse style, which is what we currently have gotten for the last decade plus. On top of that, you've got a great performance by Jason Schwartzman, who's just kind of a young punk in this movie, who's in love with his teacher, just as you remembered. Then you've got Bill Murray, who's also in love with the same teacher.
Yeah.
Neither of them, I would say, are particularly age appropriate. Jason Schwartzman definitely isn't from a legal perspective.
He's a
for
student,
sure.
yes.
He's a student, but also Bill Murray's way too old for the.
He's
teacher,
like, he's like Bill Murray age.
Right. So seeing these two guys who are not right for this woman, no matter what, kind of battle over her without considering her as a person who might have her own opinion on these things,
Right,
and
no one asks her.
having that become the story over time. Like the first half of the movie is like these two guys becoming aware of each other, becoming aware of the fact that they're after the same thing, her, the teacher, and kind of warring. That's the first 2/3 of the movie. And then the last third is her making them realize that like she's not a thing to be won type of thing. And so I really like the story of the movie. I also think from a Bill Murray perspective, this is like my third favorite thing he's been in ever. Like behind Groundhog Day and maybe Peter Venkman from Ghostbusters. Like this is top tier Bill Murray. It's just him just without any shame trying to outsmart a 15-year-old over a woman. It's very goofy and silly and I don't know, devious maybe, but in a fun way. And that's why I've seen Rushmore by far the most of any of these movies, probably 4 or 5 times, and continue to love it every time I see it.
I have just added Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums to my rewatch list.
Okay.
Probably should watch them before we recorded this episode, but you know, you can still get something out of them.
I don't know if your opinion of Royal Tenenbaums will change, but I would be shocked if Rushmore didn't move up. I'm not going to say it's going to become your favorite, but I would be shocked if your opinion changes quite a bit.
It'll probably, hopefully at least higher than French Dispatch.
Sure. Especially because of your reaction to Bottle Rocket and the fact that I know you're not a Wes Anderson mark because of the Dollhouse effect. Like you could come or leave that effect, right? For the most part.
8 of these 10 movies have 3.5 stars, and the other 2 have 3 and 2.5. So like,
sure,
I'm not blown away by Wes Anderson as a director.
Right. As a visualist.
Yeah. And
right.
Maybe I need to focus more on his characters, because that seems, after watching Bottle Rocket, I'm like, oh, maybe I've been looking at these movies the wrong way.
I find that with the exception of his animated movies, the farther he gets into his career, the more he leans into himself as a visualist with a very specific style, the less relatable his characters become.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily like that trend. You can't see it too terribly in my top. I mean, Isle of Dogs is the most recent one. But his 2 most recent, The French Dispatch and Asteroid City, are recent.
And they're low for you.
And they're the lowest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think he is getting worse for me.
Right.
Yeah.
If you were to take the total of all 4 Netflix shorts as a collection, where would it fall in your list?
Ooh, well, see, that's the weird thing, is Henry Sugar is my favorite thing he's ever done.
Sure. But you got to keep the other 3 in there too.
I mean, the safe thing would be to put it between Bottle Rocket and Isle of Dogs, which is right in the middle. But I'm not going to go safe. So I'm going to put it between 3 and 4.
Oh, wow.
That's just because Henry Sugar.
You like that a lot.
We're great. We're great on the curve here.
Sure.
I think that one is so much fun that I can overlook the 2 I didn't enjoy and the one that I was okay with.
I would probably put it between 8 and 9.
Oh, okay.
Right
low.
between Life Aquatic and The French Dispatch. Just above French Dispatch, because I think they're both anthologies with sections that I don't like at all for the most part. Not that I didn't like, some of the sections of the Netflix one, but they're mid. But I think there was more to like in the Netflix collection than French Dispatch.
Agree there. Yeah.
So
it's hard to put because I was so on the spectrum with how much I liked those four. It's hard to say where should all go.
Sure. All right. That was our top 10 Wes Anderson movies. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you disagree with our rankings, we'd love to hear your reasoning, or maybe you agree. Doesn't matter. Either way, if you'd like to tell us about it, you could always send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Send a comment, question, list suggestion, movie suggestion, pretty much anything you want to send us via email. And we'll talk about it on the podcast. Also, find the video version on YouTube, support us on Patreon, or leave us an Apple Podcast review, or follow us and communicate with us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Cinereelists. You could also follow me on my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at EOJRB.
Find me on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
Next week, we will most likely be discussing Martin Scorsese's new movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, which I believe is the first Scorsese movie you and I will have ever reviewed together.
Because is Irishman his last movie?
Yeah.
And that was 2019.
That was right before you started doing weekly with us.
I know. Thank goodness for a global pandemic to bring me to this show. I mean, yeah, millions of people may have died, but you're welcome, listeners.
Sure. And I'm pretty sure Zach will be back as well.
Oh, yeah, he'll be back too. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yep. And he'll have Tales of Toledo to share with us all.
I can't wait. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.